17th, Cass County Commission meeting to order, please. Roll call.
Commissioner Sherling?
I'm here.
Commissioner Breitling?
Here.
Commissioner Peterson?
I'm here.
Commissioner Grinberg?
Here.
Commissioner Capitan?
I'm here.
Wonderful. We have a quorum. Thank you, everyone. Taylor, if you'd lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Taylor. Commissioners, presume we've had a chance to read prior meeting minutes. If so, I'd look for a motion to approve or amend.
So moved.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Order of the agenda. You have the order of the agenda. You have the agenda before you, looking for a motion to approve it as presented, as there are no amendments.
Moved.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded, and the order agenda be approved as presented. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consent agenda. Hope you've had a chance to review the consent agenda as presented before you prior to this meeting. If so, look for a motion to approve, amend, or discuss, please.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second, please? Second. Moved and seconded, consent agenda be approved as presented. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Capitan?
Aye.
Commissioner Grinberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Commissioner Breitling?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes. Motion passes. Consent agenda is approved. Now is the time we have for public comment. If you are not on the agenda for any other item, this is the time we need to address the commission. I don't see anybody online either, virtually. Right, good, yeah. And no one rushing to the podium. So with that, we'll close the public comment period and move on to the regular agenda. Item 1 on our agenda, public hearing on plat approval for K S Johnson Subdivision. Grace is going to present this to us. Uh-huh.
Yep,
Hi, Miss Puppy, how are you?
great.
Everything going well for you?
Yeah.
Big changes in your life at all?
None
No,
whatsoever.
wonderful. Educate us on this matter.
Okay, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, so the Planning Commission reviewed this at the March 23rd meeting. It's a 10.7 acre lot that was sold through a quitclaim deed, so they are looking to do a minor subdivision. It was denied at the Planning Commission at the time for a variance request from the deed restriction requirement. And then, since then, they have submitted a preliminary deed restriction description with document to be coming with once the signatures are ready. That meets that requirement for that deed restriction document. So now the plat is in compliance with our subdivision ordinance. So I'm looking to get a public hearing and then recommend approval of the subdivision plat with the deed restriction.
So commissioners, you were given a handout prior to the meeting. Does Mr. Capitan have this? Mr. Wills, can you get this to Capitan, please?
Scan it to him right now.
I can just forward it, Robert.
Commissioner Capitan, you'll be getting a handout here in about 20 seconds. This was just handed out to us 4 minutes ago, so we didn't have it either. But take a gander real quick as the public hearing progresses. In particular, and this is for our commissioners here too, the last page, bottom paragraph, that accounts for what I believe Ms. Puppy just addressed. So I'll tell you when she sends it out, Commissioner Capitan. Okay, it should be, if you do a send and receive in your email, sir, you should have a copy of it. And again, pay particular attention to the second page, final paragraph. There we go. So any questions for Ms. Puppy? Any questions? If not, I'm going to open a public hearing. Okay, thank you. With that, now would be the time to open the public hearing for, again, the plat approval for K S Johnson Subdivision. Anyone wishing to comment regarding this? Please step to the podium and introduce yourself. welcome to the courthouse.
Thank you. This is Kirk
Johnson.
Sarah Johnson. I appreciate your opportunity to give public comment. I would actually like to continue to request the variance from you. I know that we are prepared to submit the deed restriction and accept that as being forward, but I think we would like to be heard and like to give some fact finding to this, which I think, if not even now, into the future, to be interested in the consideration of what I have to say. But I don't want to do anything that is going to delay, because we are at the mercy of building and construction season, and the county knows that. So if it's right, I'd like to actually continue in that manner.
Yeah, that's fine. It's open forum, so.
Okay. I know I look at my brother when I start to put glasses on, so don't look back at him. I hate that. All right, so a few of the things to go into this. I'm going to say a few things that are likely knowledgeable. My parents are in the room, just returned from sunny Arizona, so they might not have been aware of some of these things, so if you have a little bit of patience. I know that one of the requests I have beyond this meeting is that as Cass County, you can continue to look at your, you've ordained yourself the right to regulate subdivisions in all of Cass County, even in organized townships. I see that that is also in Century Code 1133 to do so, but we also know that that isn't just arbitrarily too. It has to align with a comprehensive plan. I also encourage you to look again at your exemptions for that model, because your exemptions obviously are mostly for farmland and designated of that particular use, but I think it should also be to single resident structures, going back to, as it was intended, the township authority for making decisions and subdivision recommendations in that. So that is my ask out of you following this meeting. In terms of the variance, as we know that as you go through it, some of the considerations that you have to take a note is in specific cases. Because anytime we've talked to anybody, anytime we went through the planning and zoning, anytime we went through all of that, everything was referenced not as ours as an individual case, but always it's whatever we do, we're setting precedents for all cases. And it's a little frustrating when the idea of a variance is to look at each individual case. So hope we approach it in that manner. And in through that, it talks about little enforcement of such provision would result in great practical difficulties, unnecessary hardship or injustice, and to avoid such consequences, provided such that they shall not be contrary to public interest or purposes or general purposes of the Century Code. So thank you for taking in my case. Birch Burdick of the State Attorney's Office wrote a letter back in March 6th of 2006 relating to this ordinance, also recognizing that townships ordinances supersede that of county, and also through the home rule ordinance. Also noting, yes, the authority to regulate the county and the provisions is also, for subdivisions is also. We recognize that, and so did he. He did note that the authority to regulate land use is not boundless and must be reasonable with reasonable conditions. He further stated that it must be reasonably regulated to the goals and objectives of the Cass County Comprehensive Plan without being unduly restrictive on the rights of landowners to develop their property. In that same letter, which he submitted to the county back then, he repeated that same line in his closing statement, not being unduly restrictive on the rights of landowners to develop their property within Cass County. I think that what you're doing, and I get that is fact-finding, and I will be putting my opinion in it, and we're all intelligent enough to separate that, of course, but I do believe that this deed restriction and which goes into perpetuity, is unduly restrictive for ordinances that are consistently being modified, changed, and nullified. And actually, in your own ordinances, says need regular review. And so I think putting something as a deed restriction onto residents into perpetuity is unduly restrictive. In addition to that, the township itself has density requirements that are equivalent to that of the county. So the township also has that authority to deny. But you're taking that right away from the townships through this back end door of these subdivision regulations. I don't think that's fair to our townships in the way that you do it. I also understand that the goals and ordinance of this process must be in line with the comprehensive plan. This is where I want to take up a little bit of issue, encourage a little bit more research, and process in which this comprehensive plan actually came to be. I do not believe the deed restriction is being fairly assessed to all of Cass County. So one thing that came up consistently in our planning and zoning meeting is that we were urbanites and we don't understand what it is like in rural living. There's dust, there's chemical, there's tractors moving, which is kind of funny because we both come up very, very long lineage of farm families and growing up in farms. The one thing about this is a comprehensive plan consistently claims that rural farm and subdivision developments, also known as leapfrog developments, which you should probably create a definition of that by recommendation into your plan because you don't define what leapfrog is, and every other state does. But in your plan, you said this causes land use conflicts with farmers and creates dissatisfaction with residents. It is mentioned several times in the comprehensive plan, pages 54, 179, 195, 208, and 212. And it references based on the results of surveys collected by both residents and farmers. These rules, policies, and goals that were adopted into the Cass County Comprehensive Plan, it appears that the officials want to convince the residents of all subdivisions and all townships are experiencing these issues, and that it applies to major subdivisions, minor subdivisions, non-farm single resident sites are severely disrupting the farmers. And the residents have significant buyer's remorse. This is unfounded in your own survey, completely unfounded. So I want to show you a particular thing. So regarding your survey, and those that were eligible to participate in which you founded your comprehensive plan, everything in red are the only places and only townships in which those surveys were sent. In addition to where those surveys are sent, 150 of them were sent out to impacted farmers. 918 of them were sent out to what they considered subdivisions. Those that were eligible to receive that, for the farmers, they had to be in 0.75 miles of an unincorporated 10-lot subdivision. They received 52 of those surveys back. For the surveys that they had sent out, they again were sent to residential structures located in 10-plus lot subdivisions. These were Mapleton, Stanley, Pleasant, Harwood, Reed, Raymond, and Bars townships. One thing I want to note also on this, it is not even hitting the majority of your Cass County residents by land. And yet, the policies and what you formed your whole comprehensive plan on was based on urban fringe development of 10-plus lots. It continues the reputation, being true or not, that the county residents in real rural areas are neglected by Cass County and not represented well. And it was proven by your survey. So as it continues, even in your own Cass County plan, it points out that of the 56 eligible subdivisions that are located on the urban fringe area, it says in there 92.7% of the county's target audience and 80% of all rural subdivision residents were represented here. Again, they said like 93% right here is their targeted audience. So what you receive from here as your targeted audience is not good policy for the rest of the county. And I don't think that was a fair assessment to build an entire comprehensive plan on. So going forward then, I still think you are putting unduly restrictive rights on landowners to develop their own land in Cass County. And your own survey results are narrowly focused on a specific land area that doesn't even represent the majority of land that you are supposed to represent in these applications. But even so, I want to dive into that survey a little bit because your survey is completely unfounded by what you claim in the comprehensive plan. Did you know that of those farmer responses, for those that you surveyed for damage to water runoff, did you have damage to water runoff, drain tile, vandalism, injury to livestock, theft? Over 80%, 84% was the lowest. Some went up as 88% said there were no issues. None. No issues. They asked if they had ever received complaints by farming activities. 89.9% said no. 90% of your farmers said no. They hadn't received complaints. I think this is a very critical part here because when we go back and look at how much it's referenced, how much we were lectured at the Planning and Zoning Committee, that these rural, non-farm resident, single residents were always complaining about noise, chemical application, dust, is unfounded. Of those respondents that did, there were only 5 that noted they received complaints. Of all of the farmer respondents, 52 responded. Only 5. Of those 5, only 2 said that there were dust complaints. That's less than 1% of your entire survey, but yet it's overly represented like that was a major issue in your comprehensive plan. In addition, noise, 1. Again, less than 1% of your survey. Odors, 2. Less than 1% of your survey. And how many complained about chemical spray complaints? 0. No farmers indicated they ever received any complaints. I also want to note that in that same survey, they asked the subdivisions to respond to, did the subdivision make for a better experience, same experience, or worse experience to them and how it impacted them? 62% of the respondents said that it made the same or better experience for them. 34% said worse. And to be representing your comprehensive plan in a manner based on a survey like that is fraudulent, I think. Also, according to the subdivision ordinance, I won't go through it, but with the as detailed. But overall, the residents of these 10-plus plot subdivisions were asked to rate the subdivision as good, neutral, and bad. 90.03% rated it good. 9.4% rated it neutral. And 0.5% rated it bad. That's literally 99.7% of the residents were happy with their subdivision. Again, not well represented in your comprehensive plan. So I do think it is unethical that this survey implemented and has supported the findings of Cass County in the comprehensive plan is not fairly applied to us in Maple River Township, outside of your urban fringe. I don't think it actually fairly represents anyone, but I'm only worried about my case right now, and I don't think it does. I think your survey is very limited in scope to these particular areas, and you're putting those ramifications across everybody, across all of Cass County. And you were not even use the information from and use that any similar type of survey instrument outside of that. There are many reasons why North Dakota has previously held that township authority supersedes county. The county is simply not in the position to make the best decision for organized townships. After being in that county planning and zoning, being told, coming from and being raised on a farm for both of us, mine right exactly where I want to build, I really feel like it's disconnected. And disconnected from the desires of the township. Even in the readings that Ms. Pupke had read, Puppy, sorry, my apologies, didn't mean to say it wrong, is one thing that wasn't submitted, which is also a part of the process according to the plan, is that the township wrote a letter in support of the variance, and the township submitted a building permit, and the township would like this to move forward. So I think that would also be critical. I don't think it should just be the county's opinion. You should also take in the opinion of the local township board. It clearly wasn't represented. I also think that it's been negligent on your part because we weren't trying to intentfully go against the will of the process. I think that had been established. We only found out about this when we were trying to get a 911 address. We were issued a building permit, and we started building. And then we tried to get our 911 address and went through this. So I also think it's a neglect on your part, knowing that we've had construction workers out there, and you've put their health and livelihood at risk by having a delayed response if there was an accident at a construction site. But I do want to go back to the township part and myself. So one, I did grow up on a family farm. I know what it's like to rake hay. I know what it's like to drive grain truck. I know what it's like to combine when Carl wouldn't fight me for it. I also know what it's like to help sick calves. I also know what it's like to transport heavy equipment across major roads to get to another field. The other thing that I know about that is I also know how to help our neighbors doing the same thing, because we did that several times. In fact, in the area in which we're building, I have been employed, worked, or helped for every single one of those neighbors that I touch. Right across me is Scott Sayward. I have worked sugar beet harvest. Not my favorite thing in the world, but I have, because that's what we do for neighbors. Gary Hoagland. Hoagland Property surrounds us there. I have walked off steps for his chemical spray and application. My brother Carl, he lives nearby. He has expanded his farming operations and recently and significantly expanded his cattle operations. And I want to address that here in the fact that North Dakota has a strong farming and agricultural community, and that isn't limited to solely farmers whose income is primarily farming. The farming heritage, the way we grew up, and agriculture traditions extend to the family of farmers. In fact, with my brother's expansion, he knows that we can help with farming efficiencies in our township where we're at. We can help Scott Sayward, which we have always done in the past, with farming efficiencies like we've done in the past, and we have a record of doing it. So the idea that we're disruptive to the farming community is completely wrong. We are welcomed, we are desired, and we can help with the efficiencies. And having family in close proximity, helping each other out, your neighbors, that's what family, farming, and agriculture traditions are about. The county should put more consideration into platting and variances based on the input of the township. The current practice of trying to eliminate the development and penalize the farmer and landowner is destructive to farming families, to property owners, to rural churches who want the enrollment, and rural community groups and businesses that rely on the volunteers. It isn't right. Yet, the county and officials who think they know better than the township want to strip our property rights through deed restriction and my parents' rights through a deed restriction on a 5-generation owned family farm. No parent or landowner should be penalized for allowing their children access to build a home and to continue to support the family farm, even if they are considered a non-farm resident. The other thing is to note that, in fact, we are the only residents on this entire section. If you're worried about your county roads, we're not accessing by county road, we access by township road. And your documents speak like you know agricultural traditions, but your policies don't. By forcing a deed restriction on our specific use is placing a potential of unnecessary hardship on my family, on our next kids, on our grandkids. Because your ordinances might change tomorrow, but your deed restriction goes into perpetuity. In the event of any farming economic difficulties, the farmer should have the right to use their own property to save the family farm. You're devaluing that property by placing a deed restriction on it. And by either exercising their right to diversify that land or even to sell a parcel if it means to save that family operation. So your deed restriction can hinder and potentially cause this undue hardship for a farmer and a landowner to exercise their property rights. We shouldn't have to make the choice between property rights or civil rights in our county. Thank you for listening for what I feel is an unnecessary hardship and injustice, and I don't believe that it is in line with the research that was created to create the comprehensive plan. Thank you for your time.
Are you open for questions?
Yes.
Any questions for our landowners?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if I necessarily have a question. I appreciate your well-prepared presentation, remarks. By way of background, Mr. Wilson and I have been having a couple conversations. I did visit with Mr. Benson yesterday. Commissioner Breitling and Capitan and I were at the township meeting in Castleton a few weeks ago. This topic came up at the end under other business. And it caught my attention from a standpoint of, I'm a new member of this commission, but also had 4 years on the Fargo City Commission and oversaw the planning portfolio. And so from a high level, I wanted to dig in and understand a little more about the county's comprehensive plan and the approach. And I had some of the same questions that you so eloquently illustrated with that map. You know, at first glance in visiting with your brother, was that, it looks like a one-size-fits-all model that we have. Clearly with the area you're talking about is not in the area of the rapid growth, if you will, from Cass County. So that was one thing I took away from a discussion that we were going to start engaging on here once the flood had kind of subsidized. So recognizing this project came forward and you, at this point, have some kind of a best offer to kind of move things along, but yet still concerned about the deed restrictions. From my standpoint, in my public life, we always have to take a look at our ordinances, whether that's every other year in the legislature or ordinances. I just think this is probably a good time to do a spot check and how that looks, how that's structured. I have no idea yet, but I'm open to looking at those options so that we're looking maybe at a fresh look at things. And I do understand that there's maybe differences of opinion as well from county or from township officers as well, and visiting with a few other folks. Not everybody's in agreement, maybe with your perspective than what I've been told with some other townships in the county. So how do we balance all that, try and find a fit that works, maybe modernizes is kind of my thoughts on this process at this point.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further questions? And I think I'll follow on Commissioner Grinberg's coattails. I wasn't around when the original was there, but as it evolved, I served in the Planning Commission for about 12 years. And the context of what was developed was the urban sprawl, right? So everyone else is winding up subsidizing these leapfrog developments. And they're saying, well, we want to live in a not in your particular case, but when you have the smaller conglomerations of housing units, they want to live within a rural infrastructure footprint with an urban intention. And what winds up happening is the rest of us wind up subsidizing the way they want to live. And I think you probably know that, sort of implied. That aside, I don't think there's anything wrong with, as Commissioner Grimmett said perfectly, looking at things. I think these are organic documents. Things like building codes, the International Building Code, the IBC, is looked at every year as well, and that's used literally worldwide. So I never have a problem with discussing, talking, and dialoguing about things like this. So again, we may not find agreement, or we may find something part way, but I don't think this commission has ever been against, with the folks that serve now or the folks prior, have been against the dialogue. So everything you've shared is wonderful. That's the way we learn, right? Because we don't know everything either. So I think it's prudent. I'm glad you're here. And I'm sure our planning department would agree. It never hurts to look at something, so. Thank you. Anything further?
Nope.
Okay, the public hearing is still open, so anyone else wishing to discuss this matter, now is your time, whether in person or virtual, to discuss this item before the public hearing is closed. So any discussion? Anyone else online? Taylor, I don't see anybody there. So there's no one online and no one in the room? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing if there's no more last call. Okay, public hearing is closed. Commissioners, we have Before us, item 1, still looking for action. Discussion, a motion.
Mr. Chairman, maybe if I can call Grace back up?
Commissioner Grimberg, please, yes. Ms. Puppy. Welcome back.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Puppy. Based on Sarah's remarks and your revised recommended motion, moving forward with this allows them to move forward, yet with some work and continued dialogue on areas of concern mentioned. That seems palatable to you?
Commissioner, or Chairman and Commissioner Grimberg. So the recommended motion was based on the submission of that deed restriction document. If they are wanting to pursue that variance request still, the recommendation would be to deny it. It doesn't have any extenuating circumstances that would make it different than any other subdivision that we've had deny the variance for that deed restriction request.
Mr. Chairman, let me come at this from a different angle then. If we pass this revised recommended motion and 6 months from now we come back with revisions, we can negate the actions we've made and modernize our policy and still not harm the project, correct?
Jace. Mr. Benson, please. I think so, but Mr. Benson, can we retroactively remove a deed restriction based on discovery, for lack of a better term?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, my understanding of the updated, because between 2019 and 2022, we updated and revised our subdivision ordinance. And with the updates, our previous ordinance did not have a mechanism to modify or eliminate deed restrictions. Our new policy does. And so my understanding is that if there, for example, someone currently deed restricted the wrong parcel on, for whatever reason in their description of the property, that could be changed in accordance with our current our updated policy of 2022. In 2020, in that.
I heard you say yes, Mr. Benson.
Well, that's what I
Yes.
want to clarify. Just yes, we can do this.
Yes,
And amend if we want to down the road.
yes.
And I'd look to our state's attorney to validate that, maybe? Okay, you have 30 seconds.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it is kind of a conundrum. The request here is in somewhat of a spirit of compromise to sign this deed agreement, but yet have concerns. So if we don't act today, let's say we don't act, we go back to a variance, that's going to delay things again. So it's, to me, the safe route is, the proper route is to act on this revised motion, and then we as elected officials and our staff need to put some time into this, to come back, work with the owners and the other parts of the Cass County to see what the interests are to change something. And if we come up with a change, we have the authority then to negate this deed restriction if deemed appropriate whenever down the road. Yes or no?
Yes. And Mr. Chair, again, and I know you, newer to the commission, but that is something we had a contract with KLJ Engineering and spent about $120,000 over a 2-year period revising and updating the subdivision ordinance, and did review that deed restriction portion and presented it multiple times at the County Township Officers Association. And that was also reflected the comprehensive plan that was updated in 2018. So so while the deed restriction portion of our subdivision ordinance came into effect in the 2006-2007 timeframe, based on that comprehensive plan, there has been a new comprehensive plan that's been updated and a new updated subdivision ordinance. But that deed restriction portion has stayed in there. It just was there was some small amendments that were made to basically allow for some different deed restriction of land. Like, for example, in their deed restriction that they've submitted, it would be primarily along the river channel, and that's something that is allowed now and previously hadn't been allowed.
Mr. Chairman, then I'd make the revised recommended motion to move forward.
Is there a second? Second. Moving second. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? If not, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Grinberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Capitan?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Commissioner Brightling?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Mr. Benson, Ms. Puppy, anything further on this item? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Item 2 on our agenda, and thank you to the owners for being here and dedicating so much time to it and educating us a bit. Item 2 on this agenda, flood update. Mr. Benson, you may as well just stay right up there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess as a side note on the last agenda item, this is Ms. Puppy's last meeting with us. She has submitted her resignation, will be.
In which you said no, so she'll be continuing on.
So-
Yay, Cass County. Continue, Mr. Benson.
Prior to me discussing the flood, I'd like to bring forward Mr. Noah Nelson from the Page Ambulance Service to talk about a recent incident with, during the past, our most recent blizzard. Come ahead, come forward, Noah.
Age Panthers.
Yeah, not in my day, it was Wolverines, I guess.
Wasn't my day.
Yeah, yep. I hear you. I'm kind of out of my element here. I'm not used to all this.
Neither are we, don't worry.
Good afternoon, officers and commissioners and so forth, employees of Cass County. My name is Noah Nelson, and I'm an EMS provider with the Page Ambulance Service in Page, North Dakota. Cass County's Highway Department's mission statement reads, and I quote, "To provide and maintain an efficient, safe, environmentally sensitive, and cost-effective county transportation system to effectively meet the citizens' needs for personal mobility and movement of goods consistent with the importance of transportation," end quote. The Page Ambulance Service was located in the northwest corner of Cass County. Would like to express its gratitude for the county's dedication to the mission. Cass County, along with much of North Dakota, was dealt a difficult winter season. Let's all hope it's over, right? This resulted in many roads and highways needing extra care and attention to maintain safe travels throughout this winter, and now you and your employees have to roll straight into flood management, so we thank you for your work. The Page Ambulance Service would like to bring special attention to a 911 dispatch that we received during the last winter storm that began April 4th and ended on April 6th. Specific details regarding this call will be kept private, obviously, for the patient and family. During the response, the Page Ambulance was unable to reach the patient due to impassable roads, excessive snow, wind, and visibility concerns. We asked for the Page Fire Department to attempt to clear the road with their pickup plow truck, but due to extremely large snowdrift conditions, they were unsuccessful. We then asked for additional resources to provide a route for the patient's location to the patient's locations and for transportation to Fargo, where the patient could receive the higher level of care needed for their critical condition. It was at this time that I met Mr. Blaine Loving over the phone. Blaine dispatched a snowplow truck to provide us a route to Fargo. This snowplow truck and its driver, who I now know as Dan, is sitting in the back there, had a treacherous trip to reach us in the northwest corner of Cass County, fighting large snowdrifts, wind, and near zero visibility, but he persevered through these difficulties. I would like to thank Blaine for the continued communication he provided with our team regarding snowplow location, road conditions, and specifically for his calm demeanor throughout the entire event. Your conduct and character during this event assisted in keeping our service content and knowing that your team was going to reach us and provide transportation route to Fargo. Dan, thank you for your continued dedication for the safety of our roadways. Without you going above and beyond that day, our patient would not have safely made it to Fargo for the higher level of care they required. You had already endured months of treacherous roads throughout this past winter, and yet you continued to step up to the plate. I hope it's all right to use a baseball pun with snow on the ground, but we're going to do that. Dan, you provide the residents and emergency personnel of Cass County with safe transportation throughout the county. Thank you again to the Cass County Highway and Roads Department for your continued dedication to your mission statement, which aims to meet the needs and residents of the emergency services of Cass County. Blaine and Dan, your dedication made a difference in the life and care needed to the resident in Cass County during a time of critical need. A difference in my confidence to be able to provide and care for all during a time of blocked roads and whiteout conditions. We are privileged that we can have multiple agencies from EMS, Fire, Cass County PD, and the Cass County Highway Department collaborate seamlessly to meet the citizens' needs of the county. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your work. And I realize that most of our friends that work in rural ambulance, there are few and far between of you, and that shortage is getting exacerbated nationwide. Mr. Wilson and I sat through a number of years ago in Ohio, a seminar regarding volunteerism, and it's disappointing to the degree our folks nationwide are no longer volunteering. So I'm grateful for you and your team.
Thank you.
Thank you. And obviously to our plow guys and the Blaine fella, well done. It's sort of that thing where you kind of get to the point where, it's my job, don't worry about it. Well, this is other jobs as assigned or other tasks as assigned portion of your job. And it's really not fair, but you guys still step up and get it done. So know that I'm grateful, and this commission, I'm sure, is grateful as well. Not to put words in their mouths, but clearly you guys are working on the days that may not be the sunniest and the shiniest, and there's probably not a bag of cookies waiting for you when you get there either, which sucks. But thanks for doing what you do and keeping our neighbors safe and alive. Commissioners, thoughts? We good to go? Mr. Benson, you have the con.
Just, Mr. Chairman, thank
Commissioner Grinberg.
Mr. Benson for bringing that in. We got an email, kind of a heads up on the kudos last week, and so it just brings us down to home when you come in and talk about it, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I would certainly add to their service. I think I've mentioned many times, they've helped us out.
Thanks, Commission. And thank you, Mr. Nelson, for coming in. And, it's unbelievable the collaboration that we have across so many agencies. And that same event, we had a snowplow, or one of our motor graders coming from Margusville, trying to make it as well and couldn't quite make it. And in collaboration with the Sheriff's Department, ended up on his way back, digging out 3 stranded motorists and from out of state that unfortunately sometimes they see the interstate's closed and the assumption is the county road is open. And so, yeah, from our local EMS and sheriffs and our highway staff, very fortunate to have such a dedicated group. So, thank you. All right. With that, I'll get started on flood update. Next slide. So, over the last month and a half, we went from normal precipitation to and probably moderate risk of flood to increased risk of flood as the number of snow events and the weather continues to be more March-like than April-like. And so even a week ago, looking at out into this week, there was some potential for some higher precipitation events, but fortunately, we're getting pretty much an ideal freeze-thaw, and we're getting more kind of late March freeze-thaw weather than we are mid-April, which should be more in the a high of about 55 right now and a low of about 34 to 36. So very fortunate that we're getting the weather that we are. So with that, we do expect to pick up about a 1/4 inch of rain in the next day and a half or two. Potentially some isolated pockets may get closer to an inch or to a 1/2 inch, but some are only going to pick up a trace. And so the models and the deterministic outlook that I'm going to show from the National Weather Service for the various rivers does include this next rain event over the next 24 to 48 hours. And fortunately, once you get beyond that, we're looking at fairly dry weather through kind of the peak of going into early next week. Next slide. So we've been planning for that 10% chance flood right now. As we go over each of the different river systems, we're looking at more likely in that 25 to 50% chance. Some rivers may be more in that 50% chance flood level. Like Mapleton actually is going to probably be less than that 22-foot range, but some rivers may still end up being closer to that 25% chance, but somewhere in that, again, depending on how much precipitation we get, but as it looks right now, we're trending more towards that 50% flood event. Next. So working our way on the Red River system, starting out Abercrombie. So the Wild Rice River goes into the Red just south of Fargo. And that right now is going to be looking to crest basically at the bottom end of the major flood stage, right around 18 feet over the weekend, and then hold. So part of that, we've been fortunate in a lot of these flood, the hydrographs that they're showing about a week ago, a number of these were showing a much steeper climb and getting up to a crest at a faster rate. Now, because of the colder weather, the National Weather Service has revised these to where it's kind of a flatter slope to the line as it moves towards the crest. And then once it's getting to a crest, a lot of these rivers are getting up there and then kind of staying at a higher level versus continuing to go up. So we're getting a lot of, I think as a lot of the snow, especially for Abercrombie, there's a lot of snow in that Wild Rice Basin, but it still has to break free and make its way. So we'll probably see some higher water on the Wild Rice for a little while, which will impact and influence the Red River in Fargo. Next. At Wahpeton, we did have a small minor crest, but the primary crest will be coming up over the weekend and hitting in that moderate level. And I think this is fortunate for Fargo, because instead of it all coming in one large crest and sending one big bubble of water down the river, it's going to benefit us. I think that's also what you're seeing there is that right now what we've seen in the last week and a half, a lot of snow melting on the Minnesota side, especially that Barnesville to Fergus Falls area, and that's the Otter Tail River system. And the Otter Tail and the Bois de Sioux meet to form the Red River in Wahpeton. So at that Red River gauge in Wahpeton, that crest a couple days ago, that smaller crest was a lot of that Otter Tail water coming through, and now the Bois de Sioux water will be pushing through for the second crest. And then on the right-hand side is the Fargo gauge, or the gauge at Hickson on the Red River, and that's now projected to get about 32 feet. If we're lucky, it'll come in just short of that, because at about 32 feet is where we close the bridge on County Road 18 going over to Barnesville and the Comstock area. So hopefully we won't have to close that bridge and deal with those impacts. But that would be being that kind of minor to not quite moderate flood stage. Next slide. So at the red on the upper left is what was projected last Friday. So you can see how it was projected to be a fairly steep rise, and then this Friday be at 33 feet. Now they're projecting a flatter slope, and then about this time next Monday being at 33 feet. And we're getting some indications the most likely crest is going to be somewhere in that 33 to 35 foot range. The next couple of days, I think, will tell, and again, depending on how much precipitation we end up actually getting. As the rain events happen, they'll update these models based on the actual moisture going in. Next slide. On the Cheyenne River system, starting quite a ways out from us north of Valley City at Lake Ashtabula, over the last several months, they drew down the pool there to this 1257 elevation, which is their flood elevation to be able to retain and store water over the flood. And right now they've been able to hold that, and there's not much water coming in, which really that whole upper reach of the Cheyenne River hasn't opened up and started flowing, and from Cooperstown to Harvey. So there's still a lot of water to come, but fortunately, I think at this time last year there was 2,000 CFS of water coming out of the dam, and that impacted that Kindred area for quite a while. So fortunately, we've got a lot of storage in the Cheyenne River system. Next slide.
That drawing's to scale, right, Jason?
That's Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, the Corps of Engineers came out with that new website that has that. It's fairly new over the last year or two, and so
Corps drew that?
the Corps, but it's a very good interactive tool for all their dams in the region.
God bless them.
At Kindred, we're actually may see a crest less than last year's crest even, right around 19 and a half. It could drag out. So I think what we'll see there is water from more of that Lisbon to Kindred area coming into the system and getting up to that point. But if we can get by with the 19 and a half, that's gonna definitely reduce overland flooding in that Kindred area, and would most likely we wouldn't see water going over State Highway 46 west of Kindred, which then follows the railroad tracks up to the Davenport area. And in the past, those significant floods in the past has caused some challenges for Davenport. Next slide. This just was recently released over the last 2-3 hours, in that at the Cheyenne River, up until this morning, they weren't predicting when it would crest and at what elevation. Now we're expecting that next Monday to be just shy of 91 feet at 90.9. And then from there, I expect it'll creep up some. It's the question and the unknown is, does it get to 91.3, 91.5, or 91.8? And you can see on the right-hand side, that's the difference between those really significant floods. And the flood of record would be 92 feet. So it's a battle of inches up in that Harwood area. But we do expect to see a fairly significant rise going from 76 feet up to that 90 feet in the next week. Next. And the next slide is the Mapleton gauge. Catlin?
He's trying.
All right. Okay. There we go. Thank you. So you can see this is looking to come in about 21 feet, which would be right between that 25 and 50% chance flood. But similar to 2022, but definitely several feet below our 2009, 2009, 2011, 2019 flood crests. I expect it will still creep up. I think one thing to note on this is that just in the last 24 hours, it's jumped several feet. And I think we'll see this in a number of the river systems and we're kind of seeing it in overland flooding, where water will stack up and it's behind ditches that are clogged with snow. That snow opens up, the culvert opens up, and all of a sudden there's a bigger rush of water into the system. It's basically like pulling the plug on your drain in the sink, and that accounts for a more significant rise. Next.
So, Mr. Benson, along that line, I've never asked this question. Are we concerned, and I'm sure we're not, but I'm just asking the question to be educated. Are we concerned about velocity of water? When does that become troublesome if you have spikes like this? I'm guessing it's not significant enough to be of remark, but is there a point when velocity becomes a serious concern?
Mr. Chair, the biggest concern with velocity is usually when it's overtopping the roads. So if there is a higher velocity of water, then it's going to take more gravel, wash more, maybe erode and wash out culverts. So it's usually around the culverts and the road, those washouts are cause if, substantial impact is based on the velocity. If you have fairly even water on both sides of the road and it goes up, a foot or 2 feet over the road and then goes back down, there might not be much damage at all. But if it's, in some cases, 6 inches of water at, I can't remember I think it's in that 5 mile an hour flow rate. And I know there's a CFS specific that's more fixed for that does more damage, but then it's starting to carry that gravel off, and then the turbulence on the downstream side also causes erosion, and along with as it's going through the pipes, those culverts, that higher velocity pipe flow can cause more damage as well.
Thank you.
And that'll, result in more damage after for cleanup. So, and then the last one is the Rush River. Yesterday, we were out working with the city of Amenia, just north of town at State 18. There's a blip in there, and that's where the city had a contractor with a backhoe out there opening up the river. It had a significant rise in about a day and a half of several feet, and it was at one point starting to threaten if it were to continue to dam up the way it was, that it could have potentially gone over a levee. So they were able to get the bridge unplugged, and then you can see it dropped about a foot and a half. So that's provided some relief on their levee, but that's the kind of collaboration that we have with the different entities out there. But we do, on this gauge, they never have a prediction on it, but we expect it'll probably stay fairly high for a while because of the amount of snow that's still in that basin, basically west of State 18 and west of Hunter up, and it comes, that water comes from west of Hunter about 8 miles, and then kind of makes a straight shot south to our County Road 32 and then heads east to Amenia. And then one thing to note with this high water that's coming through, this bubble of water it heads through the Prosper area and then towards Harwood where it meets the Cheyenne River. So about the time that this water coming on the Rush River gets to the Harwood area will be about the same time that on the Harwood gauge slide that we'll see that higher crest in that 91-foot range. Next. So with that, we've started to see a number of our western Cass County roads get overtopped. So far, we haven't seen a lot of significant damage, and most of the overtopping has happened in places that are consistent with past flood events. Not a lot of new places, but we do expect there probably will be some newer places just with the wind-packed, snow-packed ditches that we've got that seem to, there's definitely some different melting going on this year compared to some of the past years. And then of note, right by the ethanol, just south of the ethanol plant, right by the soybean plant, there's water, that legal drain that separates our new county road and the ethanol plant, that's just plugged with snow because of just how it blew in. Nothing to do with any change in the road or anything to do with that. But it's going over our concrete on our County Road 23, the north-south road. It has done that in some past flood events. I think 2011 was the last time that happened. But some of these things are going to, I foresee us, that it's over the next week, these issues are going to kind of work their way towards State Highway 18, and then closer to the weekend, start working their way from State 18 over to the County Road 11, County Road 15 corridors, and then over the weekend and into early next week, as that water keeps moving to the west, we'll see those issues more in that County Road 17, I-29 corridor, Highway 81 corridor. And again, I think we'll just continue to see a lot of unpredictable flows as all of a sudden the water stacked up in a section of land, the culvert opens up, that water moves to that next section. Maybe the ditches keep flowing good for a couple miles, and then it hits another segment of ditch that's plugged up and culverts that are plugged, and then starts stacking up. So we're expecting a volume of calls and being able to respond to those types of situations. And our sign crew is going to be putting in overtime, putting up barricades and closing roads. Next. All right. I'm going to look at our sandbag operations. we did meet our goal on Friday of 200,000 sandbags, so definitely want to thank all of the collaboration between our Cass County staff, the staff that came out at the end of their workday on Friday from the courthouse to volunteer, the collaboration that we had with the city of Fargo, their engineering staff, their public works staff, their solid waste staff, their firefighters, West Fargo Public Works. It was a great team effort. When you walked throughout the facility, you couldn't tell, who was who based on their attitude. Everybody was just in to help out and work. And then, of course, the volunteer support. Catlin did just an outstanding job of arranging and coordinating with all those volunteer groups. So really appreciate the support of across the county, across the city of Fargo, city of West Fargo, and all of the volunteers to be able to, in 4 days, get those 200,000 sandbags built. So 2,000 total volunteers came through with 4,500 total volunteer hours. Very pleased, and again, I know Blaine's in the room. He was really the lead in tracking, how the sandbags were getting built, tracking all the numbers of sandbags, tracking the loads going out to the city of Fargo, and really ramrodding the daily operation over there. So I want to thank Blaine for all of his hard work. I know he's not going to take. He doesn't like to take the compliments, but he's definitely a great employee and someone that I'm very proud to have on my staff. Next. So with that, we're still sticking with our plan, of course. This is one slide I didn't update, but I think we can, predict now, probably on the red, more in that 30, 35, but we are going to be prepared in case some sort of rain event. And we've got everything in place that we can go up to well beyond a 38-foot flood. Harwood, still looking at that probably 91 and a half foot flood event. Kindred, looking at that 20.5. And the Maple, that's one area where we're probably looking at a little bit lower crest. And I've talked about the overland flooding, continue to expect that. Next. With our sandbags, we continue to deliver sandbags. Again, the priorities for the people that have the most flood risk and flood impact, trying to get them 1,000 filled sandbags. And then where they need more, they can come in and purchase a bundle of 1,000, and we'll have a load of sand delivered. So far, we've had 19,000, as of this morning, 19,000 bundles worth of sandbags have gone out with loads of sand. And then between Thursday and Friday, we delivered 17,000 sandbags, and today we've delivered another 8,000. So we've got 25,000 sandbags, filled sandbags delivered, along with 2,000 that went out between Friday and Sunday on emergency runs to the Amenia and Davenport area. And those weren't even close to a river. It's just that overland flooding where the field opened up, it came through a culvert, couldn't get through the next culvert because it was plugged, and a resident, rural residents that haven't experienced flooding in the past, and they're calling us. And again, fortunately, we've got a great staff that's willing to jump in a truck, go out and provide those sandbags to help protect those properties. Next. So with that, based on what we're seeing on the red, we don't anticipate that we're going to have to do any of our rapid deployable flood barriers at this time, but should the crest jump from that 35 to the 36 foot throughout the week, we'll continue to monitor this, and we'll look to install those in that 76th Avenue, Crescent area. Generally, they take about a day to install, so we'll continue to monitor throughout this week. And we had our pre-construction meeting on Thursday, and our contractor's ready to move anytime if river levels start to jump up a little faster. Next. And that's the picture of the area. So focused on Forest River Road at 76th Avenue, and then just north of there in the Crescent Boulevard area. Next. Public meetings. We were looking to have, host a public meeting at Bennett Elementary with the expectation of still getting over that 36-foot crest. We're going to hold that. Unfortunately, we weren't able to line up because of some conflicts for a meeting early this week. So waiting for some more information from the National Weather Service before we, because ultimately it's looking more likely that we won't have to do any trap bags or clay levees around the culverts to close those up. So, but if anything changes, we'll get information out, and we do have the ability to get into the school later this week, so we have that opportunity too. Next, and I think this is my last, one of my last slides. We've been working closely with the sheriff. If we do have to turn on the Tactical Operations Center up at the Sheriff's Department, usually staffed by sheriff staff, emergency management, and a highway department engineering staff member, we will do that. Right now, looking most likely in that Monday that we open that up. Usually open it somewhere in that 32 to 34 foot range. Also based on the volume of calls coming in on the Cheyenne River. So with the way the crests are right now, I think we'll look to turn that on Monday and be prepared for that, that 2 to 4 day period of higher volume of phone calls as the rivers are nearing their crest. And currently all the 2418000 calls are coming to the highway department, so we're handling those, and then they get sent to the engineer for the specific area, and then those engineers are giving the information, and then coordinating with Blaine's staff or our contractor to get sandbags delivered. And then during after hours, those phone calls are either going to myself or another staff member. So we're handling any kind of nighttime emergency. If there's somebody has a emergency call, they wake up, 2 in the morning, and all of a sudden their house is surrounded by floodwaters and they need sandbags. They can call that number. The call goes to me. I'll be in contact with Blaine, dispatch our staff. Usually the sheriff's department deputies that are on duty get involved as well, and then we can get those sandbags delivered. We've got about 2,000 sandbags on 2 trucks plus a skid steer that can offload those and drive through some pretty rugged terrain to be able to deliver those sandbags if needed. Next slide. All right, and then the sheriff's department, the sheriff's got all of his equipment ready to go. So if, throughout the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, as the floodwaters go up and come back down, his staff are ready to execute any kind of search and rescue operations and support our local residents, making sure that they're safe and secure out in around the county. Next slide. All right. That's my update. I know it's a lot of information. We're tracking a lot of tributary rivers. There's a lot of things going on. But again, I couldn't do this without a great team out at the highway department between our engineering staff and Blaine with his operations staff, knowing that they're getting these road closure signs up in a timely manner, getting sandbags delivered in a timely manner, and protecting people. Especially a lot of these areas within about 4 years, 3 to 4 years, we should have the diversion project complete, and a lot of these areas will no longer need sandbags. So hopefully this is one of the last times we have to worry about this for that, especially that area up from West Fargo to Harwood, some of the Red River areas, both south of town and north of town. Looking forward to that opportunity, but in the meantime, we'll be prepared to fight this year's flood.
Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Shirley.
So you had a map of the roads that are flooded that already, especially in the western part of the state. Can we put that on Google Maps or Waze or, any maps that we can on the internet that folks might log into? I just did a quick look, and I can see in Minneapolis on Google Maps right now where traffic is stopped. And I think a lot of that is just put in by users.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, I think one of the challenges, and I'd have to follow back up with Kay Anderson, our GIS coordinator, but my understanding is we can't put out information from the government level to get, so what Google Maps is showing is because people have their phone and they've allowed the app to be able to track their speed. So when they slow down from 65 to 30 because of a accident along the road, that's how Google Maps tracks that change and then puts the red color on the map. And then it goes back to yellow and then to green again. Because these are on very low volume roads, there really isn't a mechanism to do that. So we are able to pull the DOT's feed from their GIS system. So our map does include State Highway 18, State 40, Highway 46, as well as the interstate. So we are showing where the water's going over I-94 right now on our map, but we're not able to push that to Google Maps.
Yeah, does the DOT map show our stuff then?
Right now, the DOT's, the ND Roads app or their map on their website does not pull our data from, and I think it's probably just the same problem that they would have is what we would have with, that they have with 53 counties. We don't have a mechanism to pull all the township roads onto our map with 49 townships. I would say with all the roads that we have closed, there's probably 10 times that on the township road network that currently have some sort of washout or water over the road. But again, for us to be able to it's hard enough to track down where all those washouts happened after the flood event as we do post-flood damage assessment. But it's just something that from a GIS standpoint, we haven't been able to.
It seems like a worthy goal, particularly because, not just in spring, but throughout the winter with, the rescues I'm hearing that sheriffs had to do, all the extra work Blaine's has to do. If the road's not passable and the interstate's closed down and people are taking the shortcut, it'd be great if that showed up a big bright red so people would know that maybe it wasn't such a hot idea. That's what, as I've told all of you before, that's the number one call I'm getting. It just seems like with the technology we have, that there ought to be a way to utilize that to, maybe stop some of this traffic from going through. And also just people ending up in fields off, right on township roads. There's just got to be a better way to do it.
So during the sheriff's rotation, I actually shared some of that information with Mr. Wilson, Mr. Henderson, so you might be surprised in the coming months that we have a reaction to what you're asking. Because it is being done. Like I said, I mentioned in our rotational, Ohio's apparently not doing anything, which I can't believe that's correct. The entire state is not, that doesn't seem reasonable to me. But the study the state of Minnesota did was that. So there are other states doing it to different levels and degrees. Like I said, Ohio not doing it is, I'm skeptical of that report.
And I didn't realize that that's how Google Maps works and people slowing down. Learn something new every day. But it's scary when people are, going over what they think is an inch of water and they end up in a ditch, and it's dangerous. And, I think it's really a very, very important thing that we should continue to try to do. So I hope you're right, Commissioner.
Anything further from Mr. Benson?
Oh, one other question. The Maple River, Upper Maple River dams are doing what they're supposed to do?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, right now, I haven't looked recently at the gauge at the Upper Maple River, but the Maple River Dam by Leonard, it's there hasn't been a lot of water flowing in there. The gauge at Enderlin has jumped up, so I expect it will start filling. But I expect that we'll see a lot of benefits especially downstream of Leonard for both, and in that Page area from both of those dams this year.
And one final question, the Amenia levy that we've been talking about lately, we're talking about helping to fund a levy around the community of Amenia, and you mentioned that there was some blockage on a bridge. Would that levy help Amenia this year if it was up?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, yes, if what's being designed for Armenia would make it really where that blockage in that bridge wouldn't have had much of a significant, I think it would have to go over State Highway 18 before it would go over the levee and get into Armenia, and that's not the case right now, the way their current levee is constructed.
Okay, great, thanks.
All right, anything else for Mr. Benson? If not, Mr. Benson, thank you, appreciate you. Keep us up to date, sir.
Thank you.
Item 3, jail housing addition. Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, on last Wednesday, April 12th, we, along with our architects, Klein McCarthy, opened construction bids for the jail housing addition that has been under discussion and design for quite a while now. And the results were very positive. As you see in the memo, the total bid cost between the general contract, the mechanical contract, and the electrical contract were about $26.5 million when the initial estimate from our architect was about $29.5 million. So very good news there. We are still working with our architect to kind of flesh out what that means to the overall budget, because lower project cost is going to reduce the cost of the building permit. It's going to reduce the cost of builder's risk insurance, and so we're updating those totals. We're also the architect is now pushing out the drafts of the AIA contracts for all of the successful bidders. I hope that we will have those contracts for you to consider at the next board meeting, the first meeting in May. So this is really a very positive update. You will notice there, I should mention, the low bid successful bidders were general contractor K S Johnson at a total of $16,343,500 at base plus 4 alternate alternates. Mechanical contractor Peterson Mechanical at $5.897 million, $5,897,700, and the electrical contractor Vinco at $4,302,315. So there's work to go here, but this is a really positive, important first step. I would make one quick note. Been a point of some discussion among myself and our state's attorney's office and the architect. We had a bit of a bid anomaly or variance that our low bidder, K S Johnson, had an element to their bid where they had a handwritten ad on the envelope of the sealed bid, add $150,000. And so they remain the low bid. It caused us to do some checking. Apparently it is if not common, it's a practice that's known within the industry. It was mentioned in front of all bidders in the public setting. And so we felt like we needed to do some due diligence to verify that was acceptable and appropriate to accept that as it was suggested. And based on legal advice, that additional $150,000 is reflected in this, in my tabbed bid tab sheet in total that's included in your packet. Just felt like I needed to make you aware of that because it was something that was a little unusual. But this is great news and look to move forward. There is a suggested motion down here to authorize chair to sign notices to proceed documents for general contractor work performed by K S Johnson, mechanical contract work performed by Peterson Mechanical, and electrical contract by Vinco. I don't have notice to proceed documents at this time, but we've been talking to the architect, and everything we've done up to this point is to get them going absolutely as soon as possible. So that we want to, the intent was to make it as clear as we can that we want them moving even as we're finalizing these construction agreements to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I am positively giddy at this number, as I had alluded to the fact that we were going to be much lower than the architect's estimates. That makes me right, which makes me awesome, right? But I do think accomplishing this mission, regardless of the price, as I said prior, this was one of the projects in my mind that I perceive as going forth regardless of cost. We have this in the dispatch center. The remainder of our construction projects, for the most part, are optional. So I am, again, just tickled pink at where we stand on this because this was one of those needful projects and we actually have some margin for which to play. So commissioners, discussion, a motion?
The suggested motion, second.
Printed motion.
Capitan wants to.
Okay, I have a motion and I have a second. Commissioner Capitan.
Oh, I was going to make the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So motion repeatedly, second repeatedly. Any discussion on said motion and said seconds? If not, we better do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Breitling?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Grinberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Capitan?
Aye.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Motion passes. Mr. Wilson, this is a massive expenditure, but anything further on it?
Not at this time. There'll be plenty more to come.
I think it's pretty much cut and dry. All right, item 4 on our agenda, Highway Department remodel addition contracts. Mr. Wilson.
Yes, and you've been briefed on these construction contracts previously. We've talked about this project. This one, what you're looking at today is the final consideration and approval of the AIA construction documents with the general contractor, diversified contractors, mechanical, Manning Electric, and Manning Mechanical and electrical contractor, Vinco, in the amount of $3,095,800 to proceed with work that's been previously reviewed and discussed.
Commissioners, what are your wishes?
Let's go through.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moving seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? If not, let's do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Commissioner Breitling?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Grinberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Capitan?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 5, Robert E. Johnson Building, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm going to try and keep my intro short because I imagine you might have some questions on this one. There have been many discussions going back a number of years between the county and Fargo Parks District about potentially a county acquiring the RDJ building that's owned by the Parks District. It's located directly to the west of the annex building parking lot. Recently, the discussions have included our commissioners, Commissioner Peterson, Commissioner Sherling, as well as a couple of Parks Board commissioners, in addition to staff. What is before you today comes out of the most recent discussion a week ago to really move the discussions forward to somewhat of a formal stage and have the county make an offer that at the amount $750,000 that I believe has been somewhat palatable, agreeable to the commissioners that I've had discussions with about this. That is not to say that is a final purchase offer. That is not to say that this is where these discussions would end up. This would simply be formally moving this process forward to a formal offer that the Parks District may accept, they may counter, they may have other feedback. In having some conversations leading up to this agenda item, I've had a couple of individual comments, questions, feedback from some of you of do we have a formal building inspection on the property? Do we have anything more than a volume of discussion? And I think you may it may be prudent. You may wish to consider as we enter this negotiation process. Perhaps you do want to direct me to reach out and order a formal building inspection, because to date we've got a county commission chair who is very knowledgeable in building construction, as well as a building and grounds supervisor who have walked through the building multiple times, have personal assessments of it. But do we have something more formal than that? No, we don't. So I would certainly understand that if that were part of the discussion or the board's wishes as well. Be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, questions? Concerns or discussion? Commissioner Grimberg.
Chairman, I appreciate Mr. Wilson's overview. I did speak with him yesterday briefly about this, and just kind of echoed, my 2 cents. Seems a little unusual. We're going to make a motion to spend $750,000 without knowing a building is passed inspection. To at least have transparency in what we do in government to verify that this is a building that has secrets, so to speak. That said, as well as what's it going to cost to operate, we should have all that in kind of a comprehensive view of the building, the responsibility we likely would assume, operating costs, estimated renovations, just so we have an idea of what's coming down the road rather than just, and I recognize it's been going on for quite a while, but that was my reaction when I read the board packet, is okay, there seems to be some things missing here, we need more information.
So way back when this first started, going back a couple calendar years, Mike Montplaisir actually pulled all that and broke it down for us. And this is back when we didn't, maybe some of us have the vision for what this thing might become. A, B, we had no money. So those two things combined really directed us towards what I'm just going to say Commissioner Sherling suggested as $1 and her rationale. I love your rationale that's been reiterated in myriads of meetings, in that we gave the Fargo Parks a bunch of land to the south for $1. Why? Well, because it made more sense for them to do the park thing. We looked at doing it ourselves. We can do parks. We have done parks and parks for years, but who would be better at it and how would the public be better served? Well, the public would probably be better served by a park district running the park. And there was some consternation regarding what they would turn it into. But in the end, again, we gave it to them for $1 with little or no debate. These are publicly acquired lands. We spent millions of dollars on them. And without debate, we gave them to our friends to do their due diligence and do good with it. And Commissioner Sherling, and I hope you don't mind me sharing. So part of the dialogue was regarding this building. Well, this clearly, our campus will be growing someday, whether it's 5 years or 10 years or 20 years from now. When it does grow, which direction do we grow? Well, we'll grow into the residential areas, wind up demolishing homes, or, as I suggested, the alternative is building a parking ramp with a high-rise across the street. Neither of which those would be as easy as acquiring this building now, and this would be the least painful of any option. And with that, and then 2 years passing, we now think we possibly have programming, whether it's elections or finance, something within other departments, whether it's extension or social services, law enforcement, whatever. We have a need for this building. So it seems as though now would be the time to push forward. And again, we do have those expenses. I think that we have a rough cost sort of a placeholder number of $3 million, Ms. Madriga, that should get us the mission that we want to, that some of us want to accomplish, some of us think can be done to a lesser extent. But I think what this really does, this is a final first and foremost action of getting something in front of the Park District saying, and in my mind, this is the top offer. There's no counter offer. If they come back at 850,000, sell it. If they come back at 1.2 million, sell it. I pay Park District taxes too. So if you guys think you can capture $1 million, cool, good on you. I am frustrated though, because again, we helped them when they asked us. Now is their turn to help us reciprocally. So we're making them whole. That's where this number comes from. Every bit of dollars they put into it, they're extracting. They're not cash flowing off another local body. And I think, again, this is a needful expenditure. So that's where I stand on it. But other commissioners, please share your thoughts, discussion or emotion.
Well, I would agree. This is not a starting point. This is a formal, if we were to agree to this, as far as I'm concerned, this is what I would vote for, is a 750, recognizing they put some money into the building. It is assessed at, or appraised, I believe, at 1.2, but I doubt very highly that it could sell for that. And if they can, God bless them, go get it. But there's, obviously there's work to be done to it, regardless of who purchases the building. I think there's a desire among some of the park board members for this to remain a public building that, fits well within the neighborhood architecture and would serve the community surrounding it. And I think that's, I'd agree. I think that's important. If somebody buys it, they're going to rip it down and, put up some condos. And that might be fine too, but I mean, that's just what it would be something completely different. So, but for me, we spent a lot of money on parkland that we transferred over to the Park District, and I just don't think it's in the taxpayers' best interest to spend any more than this.
Commissioner Capitan.
I'm just wondering, has there been any thought of what it's going to cost, an estimate of cost of our renovation of that building to fit our needs?
Yeah, Commissioner Capitan, that's the $3 million placeholder, and I think depending upon the perspectives of the people in the room, there's some variance amongst that. I think there can be a minimal investment to get it up and running and serve the purpose. I think that you might have an administrator and a department head sitting to my immediate right that thinks there may be a greater investment that may be needed. And I think we can have that debate when we get the building purchased. I forgot to mention this, I do like the idea, if it was Commissioner Grinberg or whether it was Mr. Wilson, I'm not sure, or a combination of both, I do like the idea of adding something to our motion regarding a formal inspection. So if this number does become something that's palatable to our friends in the Park District, we can immediately get someone in there to walk through that has some independent professional credentials that can make sure that the building is not tipping over or that we're buying ourselves into a lemon that's packed with asbestos, which neither is the case, but having someone independent validate that I think is prudent.
I agree with that also.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make that motion, but I'm struggling with the words contingent on passing a business inspection.
A building.
Building inspection, I'm sorry. What constitutes that criteria? I guess that would leave it up to the realtor or the experts on building.
Commissioner Sherling.
I would just make it real general, a complete building inspection, to our standards that we would pay for, and satisfy our concerns.
The words out of my mouth, satisfactory to the commission.
Yeah.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? If not, a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Grinberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Capitan?
Aye.
Commissioner Breitling?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Any further item on this, Mr. Wilson? You've got guidance, yes?
Yes.
Outstanding. Item 6, vouchers. I reviewed the vouchers. I did struggle a bit with the format because it's very generic. I'm used to much more detail. My team has promised me that the vouchers in the future will have more detail, so I am trusting in my team and my friends in my finance department that things are on, I know they're on the up and up, but I just like to get my fingernails dirty sometimes, and I hope you appreciate that I'm not nagging you, that I'm just trying to do my job better. So with that, I'm looking for someone to make a motion, please.
So moved.
I will second. Any discussion on the motion?
I would just add that I don't know what format you got, but, just as someone that reviews them on occasion when it's my turn, it's such an educational piece.
That's,
I learn about bullets and, things I had no idea. I know we buy bullets, but there are things that are in that voucher that I had no idea we bought. And so I learned something every time I go through them.
yep. And again, it's a detail, and it's not to nag or make your job difficult, I swear to you. It's just, I need education, and that teaches me. So, any further discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Capitan,
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson,
Yes.
Commissioner Grinberg, Commissioner Sherling,
Yes.
Commissioner Brightling.
Yes.
Motion passes. Committee reports, Mr. Wilson.
Two quick things. Just circling back to, relates to the last comment about bills. We've talked about this before. This is not new, but the level of effort that our finance department and our IT department have put into the implementation of Dynamics 365, our ERP program, through what I will say has been a challenging implementation, has been nothing less than remarkable. We've been at the point a couple of times where we are very fortunate. And some of that is, bringing on, taking on this process as we were bringing on a brand new IT director and a brand new finance director, and having them orient themselves with Cass County, the function of their department, and then implement one of the most significant operational programs that we use, cannot be understated. So very much appreciate that, and it, even if it's been mentioned before, it's worth recognizing again. And then would just recognize our department head group and the various committees that this board serves on, and the ability to work through some rather interesting policy conversations and dialogues as we have done this afternoon. I do not take that for granted. I appreciate it, and it's a pleasure to work through some of these tough things when you got a great group to work with.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Anything further?
Nothing.
Commissioner Brightling, please.
One thing, I stepped down from our seats up here and greeted Mrs. Johnson. I assume that some of you saw that and wondered what was going on. Mrs. Johnson's maiden name is Piper. Her father and her brother were sitting in the audience as well. Her brother was a former client of mine some 25 years ago. In addition, her grandfather, a Piper, served on this commission some many years ago. If you look back, you'll find that Piper name there as well. In addition, their father graduated from Oak Grove in 1958 with a classmate who happens to be a sister-in-law of mine, Barbara Beekler, who also graduated in 1958 from Oak Grove. And that's why I stepped down and spoke to them personally. I hope I didn't cause some consternation with you folks.
Grinberg made a fuss, but I said, Tony, settle down. You're the new guy. Don't ruffle feathers so soon.
Well, I don't want to top the Oak Grove story, but the Piper's grandfather, I delivered newspapers to in Mapleton, so.
Of course you did.
Well, I don't know
got
any of
nothing.
them.
I
so
got nothing.
There you go. Commissioner Brightling, anything further, sir?
No, that's it.
Outstanding. Commissioner Sherling, please.
Oh, thanks. So, and I don't want to take away from your thunder, Commissioner Peterson. Peterson, so jump on in here, but triple RDC, we met, and we need to find a spot to put the building now that we got the building that we need. Apparently, it's not going to work out with Sanford. We do have plenty of other spots to put it, so that's our latest dilemma, and, you know, time really is of the essence. So we're sorry that didn't work out, as, you know, but it'd probably be just fine in the end, but we really would like to get this taken care of ASAP. And we're looking at, you know, I mean, there's been several places that have been identified, including, you know, Highway Department down by the new Fargo Fire Station, up by Jim's emergency building up north. So there, I mean, there's various places that are already owned by, you know, either us or the city of Fargo, and so hopefully we can identify the correct one. The executive committee for the triple RDC is going to do some, put their heads together and then get back to the board of directors with their recommendation. But logistically, it was felt that they should probably visit about it first and then make a recommendation back to us. And the executive committee would be consisting of the chiefs and whatnot. So that's really all I have.
Thank you. State Attorney's Office.
Thank you, Chairman Peterson. I am happy to report that after months and months and months of not being fully staffed, we had our last position accept the job today. So if everything goes well, starting May 22nd, the State's Attorney's Office will be fully staffed. I'm excited about that. Also wanted to let the commission know that I believe it was last week, Commissioner John Strand from the Fargo City Commission had a tour of our jail. I think it went very well. I think he had some misconceptions about what the county was doing and what the county offered as far as services. And so I think that was time well spent, and I'm hopeful that maybe more of the Fargo City Commission will like to take that tour so that they also can get up to speed with the great work that the sheriff does and his team as well. Lastly, Commissioner Sherling came and visited my office last week. Thank you so much for doing that. I was glad that we finally got to get to know each other a little bit better.
Welcome, my pleasure.
That's all I've got.
Thank you. Commissioner Capitan, please.
I don't have any reports committee reports to make, but I do have a question. I noticed we had a Cass County Park Board meeting at 12, and what happened there?
You were elected the chairperson next year.
Congratulations. Show up and you're not elected. You didn't show up, so now you're running it.
So you want to repeat that? I didn't hear that.
You weren't there, so now you're the chair.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And if, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Captain, if you're wondering who made the motion, it's yours truly. This is Commissioner Grinberg.
Very good. I'm leaving New York early in the morning, so I'll be home by around noon tomorrow.
All right. Safe travel, sir. Ms. Madriga.
I think we missed.
Oh, Commissioner Grinberg, I apologize. No report. Okay. Ms. Madriga.
Oh, thank you. Just a quick update on my election administration position. The successful candidate decided to withdraw their consideration, so I am back to the drawing board with my election administrator. And to follow up on the check report, that report that you are so used to seeing is one of Sarah's beautiful creations that she used. She created all on her own, and so she is now going to be actively working to be able to recreate it in our new accounting system.
I will hug Sarah. Thank you for that.
She deserves it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything further, Ms. Madriga?
That was all. Thank you.
Okay, team, real quick, just to let everybody know, as this flood spiked up, know that your team was meeting. That's Mr. Benson, our emergency people, Mr. Wilson, myself, when I had time, and they were much more timely than I. But your team was meeting at bright and shiny every morning, followed by 2 meetings in the afternoon, once internally and then once with their friends in the city of Fargo coordinating everything. So that had all the minglings and neighbors we could possibly slam into this thing as we coordinate, and that happened basically every day. And it still is continuing to some degree right now, although to a lesser degree because of our sandbag needs diminishing. But regardless, there have been people, and you all know this, I think, but there have been people awake, bright and shiny, working long, long hours within every one of our departments to make sure that we're ready for what may have been another catastrophic flood. And obviously for some of our neighbors in the rural areas, they're not through it, and for them it is a catastrophe, even though we feel a bit safe here in the metro and maybe a little bit outside the metro. Some of our friends in the rural areas will be impacted. Oh gosh, I can go through a ton of stuff. A couple things I want to share real quick, and I will be very quick. I met with the city of Fargo, West Fargo, and our friends within Fargo Cass Public Health regarding our opioid money. We're getting about $174,000, $72,000. And we think, and this will obviously come before the commission, but the brainstorming session was to conglomerate all that number into one pot and give it to our friends at Fargo Cass Public Health and let them disseminate it. And obviously, law enforcement, judiciary, our friends in legal will probably have some input as to where that might fitter its way down to. But I think we can do greater as a group than as individuals. We're at about 170. Fargo is very similar. I think they were at 68 or 78, and our friends in West Fargo got like $24,000. So they brought, Mayor Dardis was there, and God bless him. None of us really knew these numbers ahead of time. Well, we did because we've been so active. But some of our friends on other commissions didn't know where that dollar was going to wind up. So Bernie showed up, and he was prepared in his constituents' defense and in his chief's defense to defend that money and keep it in West Fargo. And he found it $24,000, and he basically threw his hands up and said, "All right, good meeting, see ya." And I think that's where we all wound up. So an active legislative, Commissioner Grinberg, thank you for being available out there as well, talking to your friends and our neighbors as things progress legislatively. I did put out an email this morning regarding the PERS discussion. The summary of that email is essentially, we need to wait. I think there's a lot of us that don't know what's going on. I think we should be able to easily pick out numbers and understand long-term and short-term ramifications, staffing ramifications, and I don't think it's there yet. Now, whether they care or listen determines on the day sometimes of the people reading it, but I had a long conversation with some of the leaders out there on Friday, and it started with texts, ended with phone calls, and I was encouraged to do that, which I was probably going to do to some degree anyway, but that went out this morning, and thank you for Taylor for assisting in dumping that out to our friends so they had time to read it, and gotten one email back that I'm aware of. Probably that's all. Hopefully they read it tonight or tomorrow, or maybe they won't at all. But regardless, my message was we need to capitalize, pause, and then engage local government and those that are impacted. Sandbag meetings, press conferences. Mr. Benson, thank you to you and your team. Catlin, if you're back there, brother, I appreciate you more than you'll ever know for making me look smart, because I'm generally pretty stupid. So you keeping me up to speed and getting me ready for these meetings, man, I'm grateful for that. Mr. Wilson, same with you. With that, correspondence.
No correspondence.
Item 9.
Move to adjourn.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Let's get through this flood.